There was a season when they looked at you and decided you were not enough. They called you lowly, dismissed your presence, rejected your potential, and treated you like your name would never carry weight. They thought because you were struggling, you would always struggle. They thought because you were quiet, you were weak. They thought because you didn't have everything yet, you would never have anything. But they made one dangerous mistake. They judged your chapter instead of your destiny. They had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. While they were laughing at your situation, you were being strengthened. While they were rejecting you, you were being redirected. While they were closing doors in your face, God was preparing doors that no human being could shut. And now something is changing. The person they once overlooked is becoming the person they cannot ignore. The one they pushed aside is becoming the one whose presence suddenly matters. The one they said was beneath them is walking into a level of confidence, favor, wisdom, and influence they never expected. Suddenly, the same people who wouldn't give you a seat are wondering how they can get closer to your table. But listen carefully. This is not about revenge. This is about elevation. You don't need to chase anyone who rejected you. You don't need to beg anyone to recognize your worth. You don't need to explain what God is doing in your life. Let your transformation speak. Let your peace speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your results speak. Because sometimes the greatest response to rejection is not an argument. It is becoming everything they said you could never become. And if you've ever been underestimated, ignored, mocked, or treated as though you were insignificant, stay with me, because this message is for you. Your story is not ending where they left you. The same people who once looked down on you may soon be looking up to you. Not because you demanded their respect, but because your life became impossible to dismiss. They rejected the version of you they could see, but God saw the version you would become. There are moments in life when rejection feels like a verdict, as if somebody else's decision has the authority to determine your value. They looked at you, measured your circumstances, noticed what you didn't have, and concluded that you were not important enough, successful enough, connected enough, or impressive enough to deserve their respect. They called you lowly because they were looking at the surface. They saw the season you were in and assumed it was the destination you were headed toward. They saw the struggle, but couldn't see the strength being developed inside it. They saw the empty hands, but couldn't see the future those hands would build. They saw the silence, but couldn't hear the wisdom growing within you. And perhaps the most painful part was that some of these people didn't simply reject you. They made you feel ashamed of where you were. They acted as though your current circumstances were proof that you had little value. But hear this clearly. Their inability to recognize your worth never reduced your worth. A diamond doesn't become worthless because someone mistakes it for an ordinary stone. Gold doesn't lose its value because someone refuses to recognize it. And your destiny does not become smaller because somebody with limited vision couldn't see it. Sometimes people reject what they don't understand because accepting your potential would require them to reconsider everything they believe about themselves and about you. Your journey may have been confusing, slow, painful, and filled with unexpected detours, but none of those things mean your story is finished. In fact, some of the most powerful chapters of your life may have been written during the seasons when nobody was applauding. You were being trained in silence. You were learning patience when you wanted speed. You were learning discernment after trusting the wrong people. You were learning independence after realizing that not everyone who promised support would remain beside you. You were learning how to stand when nobody was cheering, and those lessons cannot be purchased. They were earned through experience. Think about what would have happened if everyone had accepted you immediately. Perhaps you would never have discovered how strong you really were. Perhaps you would have become dependent on their approval. Perhaps you would have remained in an environment that was comfortable but too small for your future. Sometimes rejection is painful because it removes something we thought we needed, only to reveal that we were being held back by the very thing we were afraid to lose. There are doors you cried over because they closed, yet years later you may realize that those doors had to close because they were leading somewhere you were never meant to stay. There are people you begged to understand you who were never assigned to understand you. There are rooms you desperately wanted access to that would have required you to shrink yourself just to fit inside. And there are moments when God allows people to underestimate you because their opinion is not supposed to become your identity. You don't have to convince everybody that you are valuable. You don't have to stand before every critic and present evidence of your potential. You don't need to announce every dream. Keep building. Keep learning. Keep becoming. Let your character mature in private. Let your discipline become stronger than your emotions. Let your faith become deeper than your circumstances, because eventually, the results of your transformation will speak a language that rejection cannot silence. One day, the people who thought they had figured you out may look at your life and realize they were only looking at the beginning. They may see the confidence you carry now and wonder where it came from. They may see opportunity surrounding you and wonder how you got there. They may see people respecting your voice, valuing your presence, and seeking your wisdom, and suddenly understand that they miscalculated you. But when that day comes, don't become obsessed with proving them wrong. Your victory is bigger than their regret. You are not rising simply so they can feel small. You are rising because you were never created to remain trapped inside someone else's limited perception of you. Your purpose is too valuable to spend your future arguing with your past. Let them remember the version of you they rejected, while you become the version of yourself you were always meant to be. Let them wonder, let them question, let them watch from a distance if they choose. You keep walking, you keep growing, you keep believing, because the person they rejected was only the beginning, not the final product. What they called lowly may become the very testimony that proves how powerful transformation can be. And when your life finally reaches a level they never imagined, you won't need to say, "I told you so." Your peace will say it, your growth will say it, your character will say it, your results will say it. Most importantly, you will finally understand that rejection did not destroy you. It redirected you toward a life where you no longer need permission to know your own worth. The table turned when you stopped begging for a seat. There comes a moment in your life when something changes quietly inside you. You stop chasing people who don't value you. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided to misunderstand you. You stop knocking on doors where you were repeatedly made to feel unwelcome. And most importantly, you stop believing that somebody else's acceptance is required for you to become who you were created to be. That moment may not look dramatic from the outside, but internally, it is a revolution. You realize that the table you were desperately trying to reach was never the only table available to you. You realize that perhaps you were spending too much energy asking for permission to sit where you were never meant to beg for a place. They called you lowly because they believed they were above you. They rejected you because they thought their approval carried more value than your own sense of purpose. They assumed you would continue chasing their attention, waiting for their invitation, hoping they would finally recognize your worth. But something happened when you stopped. You became free. You discovered that rejection could no longer control your emotions. Their silence could no longer ruin your day. Their opinions could no longer determine your confidence. Their exclusion could no longer convince you that you were excluded from your destiny. And that is when the entire dynamic began to change. Sometimes the most powerful way to change your life is to stop trying to change somebody else's opinion of you. Walk away from the need to be understood by everyone. Walk away from the exhausting habit of proving that your intentions were good. Walk away from relationships where you constantly have to audition for basic respect. Not because you hate anyone, but because you finally understand the value of your peace. When you stop begging for a seat, you start building your own table. You begin creating opportunities instead of waiting for invitations. You start developing skills instead of seeking applause. You start investing in your character instead of investing all your energy into appearances. You become so focused on becoming better that you stop noticing who is watching. And then something extraordinary happens. People begin noticing you precisely because you stop trying to make them notice you. The confidence you developed in private becomes visible. The discipline you practiced when nobody cared begins producing results. The wisdom you gained through painful experiences begins influencing your decisions. The person who once seemed invisible begins becoming impossible to ignore. And suddenly, the people who once treated you like an inconvenience begin treating your presence like an opportunity. The people who once said you were beneath them may now want your attention. The people who once ignored your messages may suddenly be looking for a response. The people who once refused to give you a chance may suddenly want to know how you achieved what they never expected from you. This is where you must be careful. Don't allow yesterday's rejection to create tomorrow's arrogance. Your elevation is not permission to become the very kind of person who once hurt you. If they rejected you, you don't have to reject them back. If they underestimated you, you don't have to humiliate them. If they ignored you, You don't have to make them feel invisible. Let your growth remain graceful. Let your success remain humble. Let your boundaries remain strong. Because true elevation is not simply reaching a higher position. It is developing the maturity to handle that position without becoming intoxicated by it. You don't need to make everyone serve you to prove that you have arrived. Your greatest victory is knowing that you can walk into any room without needing the room to validate you. You can sit at any table without shrinking yourself. You can leave any table without believing that your life is over. You can lose connections without losing yourself. You can be rejected without becoming rejected in your own mind. And when the tables turn, remember the lesson. Never confuse access with value. Someone giving you a seat does not make you valuable, and someone refusing you a seat does not make you worthless. Your worth existed before their invitation and will exist after their rejection. So build your life with such integrity that you don't need revenge to feel victorious. Let your transformation become your testimony. Let your peace become your proof. Let your progress become your answer. The same people who once wondered why anyone would choose you may eventually wonder why they ever overlooked you, but by then, you won't be desperate for their recognition. You will already understand something they couldn't teach you. You were never waiting for them to give you a place. You were preparing yourself for the place God was preparing for you. They saw your small beginning, but they couldn't see your destination. There is a dangerous mistake people make when they look at someone who is still becoming. They assume the beginning is the conclusion. They see you struggling and decide you will always struggle. They see you learning and assume you will always be inexperienced. They see you without recognition and conclude that you have nothing valuable to offer. They saw where you were standing and thought they understood where you were going. They called you lowly because your life did not yet resemble the picture they had created of success. They looked at your clothes, your circumstances, your connections, your resources, your failures, and your past, and they thought they had enough evidence to judge your future. But destiny has never been obligated to look impressive in its early stages. A seed does not look like a forest. A blueprint does not look like a finished building. A first chapter does not reveal the entire story. And your current season does not have the authority to define your final destination. There may have been moments when their words hurt you deeply. Perhaps you wondered whether they were right. Perhaps their rejection made you question yourself. Maybe you started comparing your journey to everyone else's and wondering why your progress seemed so slow. But what you couldn't see at the time was that something powerful was happening beneath the surface. You were developing roots. You were becoming stronger where nobody could see you. You were learning lessons that success could never teach you. You were discovering who was genuine and who was only interested in you when you had something to offer. You were learning patience, resilience, discipline, and discernment. Those lessons were not wasted. They were preparation. Sometimes God develops your character before He develops your circumstances, because a blessing without preparation can become a burden. You may have wanted the platform before you had the wisdom to handle it. You may have wanted the recognition before you had the emotional strength to survive criticism. You may have wanted the abundance before you learned how to manage what was already in your hands. So while you thought nothing was happening, something was happening. You were being built, and that is why you must never allow someone else's impatience with your process to make you abandon your process. They may have wanted instant results, but your journey required deep roots. They wanted to see you succeed immediately, or perhaps they wanted to see you fail permanently. But neither expectation determines your future. Your life is not a race against their timeline. You don't need to become successful on somebody else's schedule. You don't need to prove your worth by reaching milestones just because society says you should. Your journey is your journey. Keep moving, keep learning, keep improving. There will be days when your progress feels invisible, but invisible progress is still progress. There will be seasons when nobody notices your discipline, but discipline practiced in silence eventually produces visible results. There will be moments when you wonder whether your effort matters, but remember that foundations are built underground before buildings rise above them. And then one day, something changes. The person who once looked ordinary begins carrying themselves differently. Their confidence is different. Their speech is different. Their decisions are different. Their standards are different. Their opportunities are different. Their environment begins changing because they have changed. Suddenly, people who once dismissed them start paying attention. The same people who once laughed at the small beginning are shocked by the size of the result. But your response should not be arrogance. Your response should be gratitude, because you will remember the version of yourself who kept going when there was no applause. You will remember the nights when quitting seemed easier. You will remember the moments when rejection made you question whether you belonged. And you will realize that those moments were not evidence that you were forgotten. They were evidence that your story was still being written. So don't despise your small beginning. Don't be ashamed of the chapter you are currently living. Don't let someone who only saw one page convince you they understand the entire book. Your story is still unfolding. The people who rejected you may have judged your present, but God sees your potential. They may have counted what you lacked, while God was developing what you needed. They may have focused on your limitations, while you were being prepared to operate beyond them. And when your season changes, you won't need to announce it to anyone. Your life will announce it for you. Your growth will become visible. Your confidence will become undeniable. Your peace will become powerful. Your results will become evidence. The very person they thought was insignificant may become someone they deeply respect. Not because you demanded their respect, but because you refused to remain trapped inside their judgment. So keep building, keep praying, keep learning, keep becoming. The seed does not argue with the person who cannot see the forest inside it. It simply keeps growing. And that is what you must do. Grow quietly, rise steadily, trust the process. Because what they called a small beginning may one day become the testimony that proves they never knew how much potential they were looking at. When they come back, let your wisdom be greater than your hurt. There is a strange moment that happens after you have survived rejection and finally begun to rise. The people who once dismissed you may start coming back. The same people who couldn't see your value when you were struggling may suddenly recognize something different about you. They notice your confidence, your peace, your growth, your discipline, and the way you no longer chase validation. Suddenly, the person they once ignored has become someone they want close. The person they once called lowly now carries a presence they cannot easily dismiss. But this moment is not simply about watching them return. It is about discovering whether you have healed enough to respond with wisdom instead of wounded pride. Because when people who once rejected you come back, your greatest temptation may be to make them feel what they made you feel. You may want to remind them of every insult, every unanswered message, every door they closed, every moment they made you question yourself. You may want to stand before them and say, "Now you see me." But understand this, you don't need revenge to prove that you survived. Your transformation already proves it. The strongest version of you is not the person who makes everyone regret hurting you. It is the person who no longer needs anyone to regret it. That is freedom. When they come back, don't let your old pain make decisions for your new life. Don't confuse forgiveness with foolishness, and don't confuse kindness with unlimited access. You can forgive someone and still maintain boundaries. You can wish someone well without inviting them into every part of your life. You can acknowledge their growth without forgetting the lessons their behavior taught you. Sometimes people genuinely change, and sometimes they simply recognize that your circumstances have changed. Time reveals the difference. Don't rush to judge either way. Watch actions. Watch consistency. Watch character. Words are easy when someone suddenly wants access to your life. Actions require sacrifice. Anyone can say, "I always believed in you," after your success becomes visible. But you remember who believed in you when there was nothing impressive to celebrate. You remember the people who stayed when your life looked uncertain. You remember the ones who encouraged you when your dream was still fragile. Those people deserve a different kind of appreciation because they didn't love the finished product. They respected the person in the process. But don't become bitter toward everyone who once misunderstood you either. People are capable of learning. People can mature. People can realize they were wrong. If someone sincerely apologizes and demonstrates genuine change, you don't have to hold their mistake over their head forever. However, forgiveness does not mean pretending the past never happened. The past can become wisdom without remaining a prison. Let what happened teach you how to choose better, communicate better, set stronger boundaries, and recognize genuine character. The goal is not to build walls so high that nobody can reach you. The goal is to build discernment strong enough to know who deserves access. And perhaps the greatest evidence of your healing will be this: you won't feel the need to humiliate anyone who once humiliated you. You won't need to announce that they were wrong. You won't need to make them feel inferior just because they once made you feel small. You will simply continue walking in your purpose. That's real elevation. Anyone can become cruel after being hurt. It takes maturity to remain compassionate without becoming vulnerable to the same patterns. It takes strength to say, I forgive you, but I have learned. It takes wisdom to understand that not every person who returns deserves the same position they once had. Some people belong in your future, some belong in your past, some may deserve forgiveness from a distance, and some may genuinely earn another opportunity through consistent action. You don't have to decide based on emotion alone. Give time the opportunity to reveal truth. And while you're discerning, keep moving forward. Don't allow somebody's return to distract you from the life you are building. Your purpose is bigger than their recognition. Your future is bigger than their regret. Your peace is more valuable than the satisfaction of proving a point. Remember, they may eventually fight for your attention, your partnership, your wisdom, your presence, or your help, but you don't have to fight for theirs anymore. That is the beautiful reversal. Once you begged to be seen, now you are learning to see clearly. Once you needed their acceptance, now you understand your value. Once their rejection wounded your identity, now your identity is anchored somewhere deeper. So if they come back, meet them with wisdom. If they apologize, listen carefully. If they change, watch their actions. If they haven't changed, keep your boundaries. And if they simply want access because your life now looks attractive, remember the journey that brought you here. You didn't climb this mountain just to return to the valley that broke you. You climbed it to become someone who knows where they are going, who they are, and what they will no longer tolerate. Let your heart remain soft, but let your discernment remain sharp. Your greatest victory is not watching them come back. Your greatest victory is realizing that whether they come back or not, you are still moving forward. Your final victory is not their regret, it is your rise. There comes a point in every transformation when you realize the story was never really about the people who rejected you. It was about who you were becoming while they were busy underestimating you. They called you lowly, dismissed your presence, questioned your worth, and perhaps treated you as though your future had already been decided by your current circumstances. They looked at your struggle and thought they were looking at your destiny. They saw the season and mistook it for the whole story. But now you understand something they could not see. You were never finished. You were growing. You were learning. You were being strengthened. You were becoming more disciplined, more discerning, more confident, and more aware of your own worth. Every rejection that once felt like an insult became part of your education. Every closed door taught you not to force yourself into spaces where you were not valued. Every disappointment taught you to stop handing your identity to people who could not handle it with care. Every lonely season taught you that being alone is sometimes better than being surrounded by people who constantly make you feel small. And now, as your life begins to change, you may notice something remarkable. The people who once ignored you are suddenly paying attention. The people who thought you were insignificant may suddenly want your presence. The people who refuse to acknowledge your value may now be wondering how they can become part of your world. But don't make the mistake of thinking that their new interest is the ultimate proof that you have won. Their attention is not your trophy. Their regret is not your reward. Their recognition is not the measurement of your worth. Your real victory is becoming so secure in who you are that you no longer need their approval at all. Think about how powerful that is. They can praise you and you remain grounded. They can criticize you and you remain grounded. They can invite you in and you can decide wisely. They can walk away and you don't collapse. They can recognize you late and you don't spend your life asking why they didn't recognize you sooner. That is freedom. That is emotional maturity. That is the kind of victory nobody can take away from you. You don't need to spend the rest of your life reminding people that they once rejected you. Let history keep the record. Your responsibility is to keep writing the future. Build something meaningful. Become someone you respect. Protect your peace. Strengthen your relationship with God. Keep your standards high without allowing pride to control you. Keep your heart compassionate without becoming naive. And when opportunities come, don't accept them simply because they finally arrived from the people who once denied them to you. Ask whether they align with your purpose. Ask whether they honor your values. Ask whether they bring peace or confusion. You have learned too much to return to the same patterns simply because someone now sees what they failed to see before. Your future deserves better than that. And perhaps the most beautiful part of your story is that you don't have to become bitter to become powerful. You can rise without hatred. You can succeed without revenge. You can become respected without disrespecting anyone. You can forgive without forgetting the wisdom gained through pain. You can move forward without carrying the weight of every person who once hurt you. Let God handle the justice while you handle the journey. Let Him deal with what you cannot control while you focus on what you can build. There will be a day when you look back and realize that the rejection that once broke your heart was actually one of the moments that redirected your life. You will understand why certain doors closed. You will understand why certain relationships ended. You will understand why certain people were not allowed to accompany you into the next chapter. And instead of asking, "Why did they reject me?" you will ask, "What was I being prepared for?" That question changes everything. Because now you stop seeing yourself as the person who was rejected and start seeing yourself as the person who was redirected. You stop seeing the closed door as an ending and start seeing it as protection. You stop seeing your humble beginning as humiliation and start seeing it as preparation. You stop seeing their insults as definitions and start seeing them as opinions that never had authority over your destiny. And when the day comes that people are fighting for your attention, competing for your partnership, seeking your wisdom, or wanting to be part of what you have built, remember the person you were before any of this happened. Don't abandon that person. Honor them. They kept going when nobody understood. They believed when there was little evidence. They survived what they thought they couldn't survive. They kept their heart alive after disappointment. They continued walking when the road was lonely. That person deserves your gratitude. So rise, but rise with humility. Win, but win with character. Become successful, but don't let success become your identity. Let your blessings become evidence of what perseverance can produce. Let your peace become evidence that rejection didn't destroy you. Let your life become a testimony that someone else's judgment cannot cancel your purpose. And if they finally recognize you, smile, but don't stop walking. If they finally respect you, appreciate it, but don't depend on it. If they finally regret rejecting you, let them have their regret, but don't make it the center of your story. Because your greatest victory is not that they finally want you. Your greatest victory is that you finally stop needing them to. The person they called lowly was never destined to remain low. You were simply in a chapter they misunderstood. Now turn the page. Walk boldly into what is next. Your story is bigger than their opinion, your future is greater than their rejection, and your purpose is far too valuable to spend another day trying to prove yourself to people who already showed you they couldn't see you. You don't need to fight for the seat anymore. Build the table, protect your peace, and let your life speak.